All right, for the recording this time, I did discover some code that lets us display basically a message box. And this is the deprecated way. This is not even the way we did it last year. Right? This is Swift because it starts with a var and it has a variable, and then we declare its type as a UI alert view, and then we instantiate it. Right? Basically a message box. What's your title? This is really a subtitle. The title is in a large font, and this message, whatever it is in a smaller font. So consider that when you're defining these. I often will set my title to be very brief and then details underneath. I don't think you even have to designate a message. You could just leave it off. Just have a title that's really big and it says what you want it to say. A delegate is a piece of code or a function that handles an event. Okay, so it's kind of like a pointer to a function. In this case, when we click on the OK button in our message box, nothing is going to happen. We can define its cancel button title. What I need to check is see if default button title is also available. That's the way it used to be designated. But this is deprecated code anyways. Okay. This has gone away. It's easy. It works. Our version of Xcode doesn't complain about it, but supposedly when you upgrade to a certain level, it doesn't like it. And maybe if we were to actually put it on a device, it would say, no, in iOS 8, this isn't acceptable anymore. But I've seen a couple of sites that say it's deprecated. So I'm going to stay away from it, but I wanted to show it to you because it's relatively simple. It might be a quick and dirty solution to a problem someday if you want to use it for testing purposes, because that's another thing you can use these message boxes for, is testing. I'm writing code. What's in that variable? Okay, I can debug and I can put things in the controller window, but sometimes you just want to see it, and you can use this for that. The new solution that's out there, and it's the same site that said this is deprecated, gave me this. We use the alert controller class instead. Okay. UI alert is an instantiated UI alert controller, which means this must be a UI alert controller, right? So down here, the colon was probably not, the colon UI alert was probably not necessary because of the new Swift stuff. Again, we give it a title. We give it a message, subtitle because it's smaller, and then you designate a style. What kind of dialog box do you want? There's an alert, and there's a different one. The alert appears in the middle of the screen, and the other one, I forget what it is, appears at the bottom of the screen. Same size, it's just a different location. I'm just going to stick with the alert. And what I mentioned before the recording is because of Swift's implied types, this preferred style has to be, because by definition it's a UI alert controller style. Has to be. Because that's what the alert controller decided. This is your alert controller style. So you don't have to designate that. You can shorten your code by just saying .alert. And this is something I got a feeling I'm going to try to remember for the rest of this class, because there's probably a lot of places I can put that to use. And I think I actually use it in the date picker example a little while later here. So we can leave that off and just say alert. This creates the message box, but it doesn't have any buttons in it. The way the alert controller works is you have complete control over buttons, so we're going to add an action, which is basically a button, to it. And I'm instantiating an action right inside here. The examples that I've seen do it two ways. They create a variable and then they use the variable. But right here, I create an alert action, give it a title, that's the button's action, and then give it a style, default. I don't know what other styles there are, I haven't looked. It's just a default button then. And again, there's no handler. The handler basically is when I click on the OK button, who's going to process this code? Well, for my simple message boxes, I just want to click on OK and make them go away. There's no processing that happens after the fact. Though you could do that. This website shows an example of how you can create a message. Actually, it's really a bizarre example. They throw up one of these alerts, and then when you click on OK to make a phone call, basically, it throws up another alert that says that feature hasn't been enabled yet. So it's an alert that results in an alert. Goofy, but it's an example to show you how to tie to a piece of code. We're not going to do that. And then finally, once you've got all this setup done, then you say that present the view controller, which is basically this show. Which view controller? This one. And do you want it animated? Yeah, that usually makes them stretch and do things. I always do the animation. And then what do we do when it's done? Nothing. So let's try that. Let's see if my
So much longer than
it looks a little longer because we're defining the buttons. In the old ones here, well, not really though if you look at it. Okay, there's one here. There's a little bit more. And there might actually be a way to, I don't know if I can merge those, probably not. But it's not too much longer. If you take out all my comments and some of this other stuff, it's not terrible. But it was a little cleaner before, you're right. All right, so here we are, and what I want to do now is if the user, back here in my segment change, okay, if the user picks the Stevens Point campus, I want to throw up an alert that says, welcome home, just as an example. So underneath my switch, I could put it in case 0, because that is the Stevens Point campus, right? I could put it in there, but just to keep my case statement clean, it's just picking pictures. That's what the first one does. I'm going to put an if statement here. If the segment campus dot selected segment index equals 0, double equals 0, then display my alert. Now what? Let's get rid of you. I don't think I need you for a while. What are you complaining about? Seg campus.
You don't have index.
Selected segment index. Thank you. I said that, just didn't listen to me. Okay, if the selected segment index is 0, then let's do one of these alert things. So now I wish I had a little more screen space here to show my notes at the same time without scrolling. And so I need a variable alert, UI alert controller. This is just a variable name, alert. You can call it whatever you want. Equals a UI alert, can't type today, controller. Parentheses, because we're instantiating it. And then a lovely feature here, if you press enter, it gives you the other parenthesis but doesn't start a new line. I really wanted to start a new line. Now inside here I can send it certain parameters, and remember in Swift the parameters are named.
You can, if you can use it and it'll just put it in the parameters and for you by pressing tab if you go down.
Press tab, okay. So if I went, so what you're saying is if I didn't do this parentheses thingy here, let's try that, come back here. Okay, and then a colon, and it gives me a bunch of stuff. Press tab.
Go to the bottom one.
Bottom one.
Select which one you want.
Ah, okay. So there's a nib. What the heck's a nib? It's a view. Just really old term for it, so that must be an older one. And here's the alert controller with a title, a message, and a preferred style, and that's the one we want. So press tab, and it says, what's your title? And again, now I think I got all this stuff in here. Tab, what's your title? Let's say welcome home, because that's my big message. And then what's my little message? Let's just say Stevens Point campus.
Stevens campus.
And for the preferred style, I'm just moving these down so they're a little easier for you to see. I'm just going to type a dot, what was it, default?
Alert. Not alert, I believe.
Preferred style, dot alert. So you shouldn't be getting any errors on that. And it looks like all my buttons are done. Okay, so that's part one. What that does is sets up the dialog outline, if you will, with its title and its message, but it doesn't have any buttons.
Stevens campus.
Thank you. That sets up the outline. Now we need to do the buttons. So we're going to add an action to our alert. Add action, parentheses, UI alert action, another parentheses. This is actually instantiating a UI alert action. Okay, so these titles and styles and handlers are they're part of this object that is being added to that object. another parenthesis, and then I probably need this one, right? Don't know that I need all that stuff. It's going to give me a little bit extra, but we're just going to wipe it out. Okay, so once again, the title, what do I want for my button? Okay. Style, if I remember right, was .default. Notice the downside to using this dot thing is it doesn't give you a whole lot of help. And then the handler is nil. And notice there's two parentheses here, one for the add action and one for the UI alert, what was it? Controller.
UI alert action.
Oh, here I am, UI alert action. Yeah. So there's two parentheses, one here and one there that we need to close. And that's all on one line because Justin doesn't want it to be too much longer. You could split this like I did up here so that every parameter is on a separate line, that's fine. But here, basically, I need an OK button. So that's relatively short if my font format's so big. And then underneath, we have to present it, if I remember right. Present view controller. Which one? My alert. You want it animated? Sure. Completion, nil.
So what is the present view controller that just makes it?
That actually is the show command. Do it. All right, so these first two, we're setting it up. This one sets up the message box itself with its title and text. It's an alert box instead of the alert. I forget what the other one is. Where's my notes? Let's go look real quick. What?
Can you connect other web pages? Or is that when the web page is done?
Got a website. Maybe that web page isn't as good as I thought it was. UW app code, UI alert controller dash Swift closers enum. Swear that's what it said. I'll go find that a little later. Don't know why that's not going there. But that was the page. I was just going to look up the other style of alert that appears at the bottom, but it really doesn't matter. So back to the code, we probably should test it. But again, this sets up the outline. This adds the button. If you wanted a couple more buttons, you could probably do more add actions. And then when everything's ready, then you show it. All right, so we finally got this running. I had to start it up again. And if I switch to Marshfield, nothing happens. But if I come back to point, I should get an alert. There it is. There's our title. That's the subtitle or the message. And then there's an OK button. And when you click the OK button, it goes away. Nick, my suspicion is yours on view did load. It's kind of like form load. It hasn't even shown yet. So there's no place to link it to. And that's might be probably why it's not showing. Okay, so that's the alert. I think you need that, if I remember right, for the password program that I asked you to do, so that when the password is successfully changed, you throw up an alert message and tell them it's been changed. Comes in handy for a few other things a little bit later. Relatively simple. I once upon a time thought about maybe I should write a function that does all this, but you know what? By the time you send in the 3 or 4 different pieces of information that you need, really all I need is this, right? So I could write a function called valert, a Volcker alert, that takes in 2 strings and sticks them together like this. Because everything else, it's always nil, it's always okay, it's always animated true. If those are so constant, then maybe you make a function. You want to do it so you can see what it looks like?
Sure.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
So somewhere in here I need to write a function. I'm just going to write a function right here, and I'm going to call it the Volcker alert. He's coming. Parameters, none. Return type, none. I'm sorry, parameters, there's two, aren't there? Two strings.
Title message.
So there's, let's see, how do I do this? Do I put the var in there? I forget, I don't think so. I think it's just title colon string. It's a capital S. And message colon string. No, it made it lowercase, I thought so. It switched it to lowercase. I think it's either one. I think it's either one, and one of them is a little bit. I'm just back to C# now. We're learning about strings and programming logic. So it's lowercase string there. Okay. No return type. Still complaining about something. Let's go in here, and now I'm going to steal all this code.
What's the area?
Getting there. Going to cut this, paste it into my function. Okay, and I have a title and I have a message. I could have named those something different, but then I'd have to update this. Uh-oh. Okay, so here I want my title to go in. That should read interesting. And here I want my message to go in. And down here's another title, but this is a parameter name and this is a variable name. That's kind of confusing, isn't it?
It is.
So let's change that. So no, I'm not going to abbreviate it to TIT. What?
The external name and the internal name there, so that when you type it out, it still says title, but you use it to separate internal name.
Yes, good idea. So my internal name might be T, and that's the external name. Is this how that was done?
I think so. No.
So this is the external name, this is the internal name, external name, internal name. Still getting something it doesn't like here. Undeclared, use of undeclared type void.
Do you need to even
Is it
say
capital
void?
V?
Do you even need to say the void part with the arrow and such, because if you're not returning anything?
I have it closed, just returns and then close parentheses.
I think it needs to be capital string.
I think you're right. No error.
Happy now?
Looks like it. Okay, so there's my function, and so now down here, I call my function. So I do a Evoker alert with a title of welcome home and a message of Stevens Point campus. Nice and clean, right? Now Evoker alert's a stupid name, but you get the idea. You can call it whatever you want.
I just called mine alert.
And it was fine?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Because that was just a variable, right? This is a local variable. We could call it an alert here. The function name alert, does that cause trouble here then? I have a function name alert and a variable called alert? might cause trouble here in my head if I look at it later. Wait a minute, why does this function have a variable that's got the same name and all? Same result.
So what did you do in the function with the title T?
Okay, this is when I called my method down here, when I called my function down here. This is the external name, so that it just when I did my Evoker alert. Let's just do that again. Might be easier. It was helping me, right? Sometimes I miss my Windows keyboard. Let's try that. There we go. When I do the Evoker alert, it pops up and says, see the word title there? That's the external name of this. So when somebody's calling it, it gives them a detailed description of what we want. All right. But internally to my function, I don't want to call it title because then I have this title equals title and this title equals okay, and it just gets a little confusing. And so we said internal to this function, we're going to refer to this first parameter as T. But to the outside world, call it title. So this word title shows up. If I don't put that on there, everything's fine.
Yeah.
But now when I come down here, it says, give me the T thing. And I'm going, what T thing? And actually, without the external title, it's not even showing up. That doesn't make sense.
It's probably because if you got rid of your message one too. Maybe, I don't know.
It wants a string, but we don't know which one. But I thought if we don't designate an external, that the internal and the external are supposed to be the same.
That's what
If you backspace twice, and then try it. One more.
One more?
I have to enter the T first.
Ha. Okay, but now it says T and M, and whoever's using this, imagine this is part of a class. It's a method instead of a function. Whoever's using this and trying to call it from some library, this is supposed to help them out. Say, give me a T and an M. No.
Okay.
So all we're doing is providing the flexibility here to say, outside world, tell them it's the message and the title. Inside here, we're just going to call it M.
So we're just trying to differentiate between
This
the title
title.
and the message
and this-
versus the button title and,
Mm-hmm.
right?
And the parameter names that are here. Because this said title, and this said message. And that's kind of confusing.
Okay.
if you really want to make it tricky, you can throw in another one for your button title.
We could.
Or
But
create
this
a-
is
Then you
supposed
have
to
to-
be my
okay.
simple alert, and maybe that's a good name for it. It's a simple alert. It's an OK button with a title and a message. Done. No fancy stuff with fancy button names and images on your buttons, and I don't even know if I could do that, but you get the idea. Okay. Now what do I want to do? Last thing, or two things I've still got to cover here, and I'm trying to get them done in one recording. I also want to talk a little bit, and this, by the way, is the old way of doing, and I tried messing with it a little bit and didn't get very far. This is the old way of creating an alert that allows you to type in some text. But we said offline before the recording was on that we probably wouldn't do that very often. If you need it, you're going to have to look it up. I'm probably going to pull that from my notes. So last thing I want to talk about in relation to these objects is the date picker. How do I get the value from the date picker? And alternatively, how do I set the value of my date picker? What we have to do in order to make that happen is use the built-in, and this is what I wish, and I'm still hoping, it's early yet, that somewhere in Swift they'll create a new date class that's a whole lot friendlier than NSDate. NSDate is a class that holds dates, but it has no ability to format itself. To me, that ought to be inside that class. So there's a separate NSDate formatter class. And what's kind of nice about the date formatter is it has the ability to make a date out of a string, and it has the ability to make a string out of a date. So the date formatter can do both. So in a way, that's kind of nice, but it's still an awful lot of overhead here, if you ask me. And so I'm going to be creating, this is in the back of my mind, things to do, creating a set of notes just for dates. So they can be their own interesting challenge. But really, most of the time, what we need to do with dates is pull them from the date picker and put them in the date picker. And then if you need to start manipulating those dates later, storing them in a database, adding 30, subtracting 2 months, or whatever you want to do, then that's a whole different process. So this simplifies, I think, getting stuff out of that date picker. Let's go to our form here, and I don't have any room for a date picker because those things are so darn big. Okay, so I'm just going to be goofy, and I'm going to make this kind of a background image. And I'm going to add a date picker right on top of my image. Bring my objects up just because I ran out of room for my example here, and go find my date picker. And Nick, of course, is doing a search, which is fine. There's my date picker, and I'm going to drag it right on top of my picture, if it lets me. Okay. Shrink this down a little bit so I can see what I'm doing. I'm going to put my date picker all the way across. And I'm not really interested in time, so I'm going to change my date picker style. We did this before to just a date. I'm not going to worry about the mins and maxes. And oh, by the way, in my notes it mentioned this timer thing. You can actually use a date time picker, which is just goofy, if you ask me, to do a countdown timer. Why a date time picker? Because it's relatively easy to pick minutes and seconds and hours and those kinds of things and create a timer. It's just really weird to me that it's inside that class and not its own object of some kind. I haven't messed with it much. I tried it, I can set it, but I think you have to create a button that gets the timer to start, and then I haven't messed with it that deep. If you're interested, I just ran across it or stumbled, just viewed it and played with it a little bit. Okay, so there's my date time picker. It's going to show me a date. And let's see if I remember right, we can click on this date time picker, and then under the editor, we can arrange. No, it's going to just, looks like it's going to be in front. If that's what I have selected. I think that's, oh, there it is. Now let's try it. Edit, arrange. Nope, still doesn't want to bring it to the front. So hopefully it'll look okay. Let's just run it. As long as I can use the date picker, I'm not too worried about it. And it's a little crusty, but I can use it. Okay, you don't like that? Then let's fix it. I'm going to shrink it. If I can get hold of it. It's about the same size as my picture and park it on top. And change its font color, if I can, to white. I can change its tint. It says it's opaque. That's interesting. Tint is blue.
But the background is set transparent.
Yes, okay, so I could make that brighter, but then I can't see my picture, and I kind of want to see the picture. See if I change this to white, what happens. I'm just playing with stuff. That didn't do what I wanted to do. So I'm not quite sure what the tint was doing to me. I don't see a way to change that date picker's text, so I guess you're not supposed to put it on top of a picture. That's right, we can use it. We're just trying to demonstrate stuff here, so I'm going to leave it. And now what I want to do, let's go to View Did Load. And I want to change that date picker, but before I can do that, if I want to change it or sense it, I need to create an outlet for it. And I'll call this DTP picker just for lack of a better name. And then in View Did Load, I want to set its date. So the first thing I need here is a date formatter. And what most programs do is just call it DF. I've seen date formatter with a lowercase d, which is fine. And its type is a UI date formatter. No, NS, excuse me. Instantiated. No, that's an equal sign, right? Check my note. I bet it's an equal sign. Yep. This says, make me a new NS date formatter and then make me point to it. And what's the type of this? It must be it's inferred. So now we have a date formatter. I did discover somewhere that we can set the date formatter's date style. Notice there's a date format. If you want to customize it, you can, but I don't know exactly how that works inside the date formatter. I'm going to use the date style. I'm going to set that equal to there's a dot, because this is a style. There's only a few lists of styles. I just can't remember which one it is. Short style.
It's weird having that dot be the first.
Yeah, that's when I first saw it, but it's convenient. It really shortens things. You know, it's kind of weird that it's hanging out there, but what it's really doing, and I guess you get used to this when you're an iOS programmer, is it's inferring its type. This is coming from a date style enumeration, right? It's like that color enumeration. There's a date style. There's only 3 or 4 different styles, or 2. I don't even know how many there were. Let's find out. If I do a what is that style? I think it was NS date.
State style.
Formatter style. There it is. Date formatter style. Dot.
You've got the style.
God, why does it do that to me? I hate that. I selected it. It should be inserting it. Style. Dot. And there's a full style, a long style, a medium style, no style, raw style, short style. There's only 5. All right. And in most enumerations, each one of those is given kind of a magic index number. If you want full style, you could say style equals 0. You could say style equals 1 for long style. Those are just assigned number. They're names that are assigned to numbers in most languages, but I read a website that said not in Swift. They're actual values of some kind, and so you can't use the zeros. The indexes don't mean anything, and most of the time we pick the names anyways because it makes it easier to read. So it's an enumeration. So this date formatter style here that we see, this date style, its type is an NS date formatter style. It must be, and so over here, this has to be, whatever we give it has to be an NS date formatter style, so I don't even have to list it. The only reason I would is to find out what options are available to me. Okay, then we can start using this date formatter, we can make dates out of stuff. So I'm going to change my date picker dot set date to a date, and notice the type of date. It's an NS date. Well, I happen to know that a date formatter make date. Oh, is it just date from string? There it is, date from string. I happen to know that the date from string method returns a date, NS date. So all I have to do is give it a string. So let's see, let's put Christmas in there. You want it animated? Sure, what the heck. And I love this. It said, the date formatter thing is a wrapped, meaning it's optional, might not have a date. When I do the set date from string, or string from date, or whatever that was, that might return an empty string. It might crash if I don't give it a good date. You sure you want to unwrap it? Well, if I give it, I'm putting in, just in this case, yes, I want to unwrap it, so it puts an exclamation mark on the end, and then it's happy. Yeesh. I'm going to remember to focus more on those next year, those wrapped things and those optional nil variable types, and all classes are optional. So you often have to unwrap them. The good news is the error message pops up and tells you, you want an exclamation mark. My first thought was, where would I put it? But then I clicked on it, it did it for me, so thank you. That should do it. I'm not getting an error, so this says, hey, date picker, make your date equal to this. Convert it into a date. And animated, I don't know if we're going to see it because it happens on form load. And the date is December 25th, 2014. Kind of hard to read, but it's there. So I've initialized my date to some value. And now let's reverse the process. So I'm going to go into my button code, Since I already have one, might as well use it. Where'd my button go? Background tap. There it is. Set the background color, but I'm also going to display an alert. Oh, those are a pain. Not anymore. Booker alert. Dun, dun, dun. Title. Selected date. Give it a string. Message. I want to pull the date out of the date picker. So once again, I'm going to use my trusty dusty, don't have a date formatter in here. Could I make the date formatter global or class level? Probably. Would I in this case? Maybe.
Do you need a variable for the date formatter?
Yes, because do I need, okay, so you want to do this. The answer is no. His question for the recording was, do you need a variable for it? Or can you create a new, can I do a new, no, I didn't just do a date formatter. Get in that box there. A NS date formatter. Parentheses. Forgot how I did that. I created one. NS date formatter, that creates one. Dot. Date from string, no. String from date. DTP picker. Dot date. Probably another parenthesis in there someplace. No, maybe not. Because we're just setting that as our message.
You can close your side thing so you get more code view.
Yeah. And not make this quite so big, especially since I'm done with it. So is it complaining about that? It wants something, doesn't it?
You didn't close it yet.
It didn't?
No.
Is there more? So I need no, there's not more. Oh, that was a function call. So yes, there is another parenthesis. Phew. So this says, just give me one, a new date time formatter. Parentheses are necessary because that instantiates one temporarily, and use it to convert this date into a string, and then take that string and stick it into the message. Whoa. Cool. See if that works. I'm going to go to New Year's. Doesn't matter. Uh-oh.
Since it's expecting a string, does it have to be in those?
Didn't I give it a string?
Said string.
String from date. So take this date, and this is an NS date, okay? Turn into a string, format it, and then return. Maybe we have, I don't know if we need to do a new here.
You have to put it in quotes and then do your thingy.
Let's
the
try
backslash.
this. That'll then create it and use that thing. I don't know if that's going to be any different. Are you saying I do, or are you
No, I'm
suggesting?
saying put it in quotes like above and have that backslash and the whole thing and another set.
This should be a string though, shouldn't it?
I have no idea, I don't know, just throwing out ideas.
Yeah, okay, well, I'm just asking if you verified it or not before I go try that. So that was all Paul's idea, so we're not gonna do that anymore. I don't know if I need its format here though. Its format style, because we're just taking that date, putting it in there. This is on button click, so there should be a date picker value. See if that solves the problem.
And Brian, I made it add an exclamation point after the date it was supposed to retrieve and just return an exclamation point.
Why wouldn't that work? Let's go look at my notes real quick. df string from date, date picker dot date. Except I put it in a variable, but the variable is a string.
Have a date style.
I don't have a date style, but this is an NS date, right? No, it's
And that's
this is retrieve it. This is set it. Did I say set date? No, I don't want to set date. I want to retrieve it. And without a style, then you get some long, ugly thing, but maybe you don't need it. You need the style here because that's how I designate what this string format's going to be. If I say long style and I put this in there, it chokes on it because that's not a long date. It's not what it expects. df string from date, put it in a string. I know I tested that. So let's add the style, see if it makes a difference. It's the only thing that's missing. What was it? df what style?
Df dot date style. That worked for me. Not sure now.
Well, so before I can display it, I have to give it a style.
Because otherwise,
Regardless of what the style is up here. Just putting that in there so I remember it for future projects. And then you can also use the M styles and stuff. So I think we can,
apparently it was defaulting to no style. When I changed it to no style, it worked as we had it without the code at all. His style.
let's try and remember how to do this. That's not right. All right, I'll look that up later. For us to create a custom style, it's a date format. If I remember right, but I don't remember if it's an equal, it might be. Likes that a little better. M's or minutes is my guess. I need capital M's. Okay, last thing I want to do, let's get this done. Last thing I want to do is change the project icon. If I go back to my simulator and I do a hardware home button, I go back and get this lame looking icon. What if I want my own? Now I have not tested this, but I don't think this part of it has changed. All right. If I want my own, going back to the notes, and by the way, there's also just a regular old picker thing, which is kind of like a combo box, but it spins. All right. And the code for that was pretty tricky. So I didn't put it in here right away. If you want to experiment with it, you can. This was a reference, but that's an iOS 7 non-Swift Objective-C reference. And that's what I've been spending that's what I spent all morning doing, is translating what I had before into Swift, and it's not always straightforward. But there's a lot of people doing this stuff, plenty of Google stuff out there already on Swift. So we want to add an application button. The App Store requires, if you're going to publish an app, a 1024 by 1024 icon. It's a big icon. All right. That's what it requires, so that when you go to the App Store, the iTunes Store, and the people are flying through, they click on yours and they get this big icon picture. If you're publishing to the store, keep it. Right? If you're not, then you might want to do a 120 by 120 iPhone icon, right? Regular size icon, 120 by 120 pixels. It's 120 by 120 because the new Retina screens have twice the resolution, they have twice the number of dots. Most icons for the older devices are 60 by 60. This just doubles your resolution, makes it still look good on a Retina, makes it look a little better on a Retina screen. Okay. Here's a site. Let's see if that one works. Click. Okay. We can create icons here. Okay. So you bring in, you import your own picture, and then decide what do you want to do with it. And you can, including rotating, that's a pretty handy site. When you're done, it gives you the standard icons. Now I've already done this. So this is a site that you can use to create your own when you're doing your apps for passwords. You can go find your, or make your own icons. Or you can use this site to help you. So that's handy. But I already have one. Okay. The other thing to recognize is that you should name it icon-60 at 2x, meaning Retina displays, .png. The icon has to have this name in order for it to be recognized as your app icon. So let's go find that first. If you've downloaded my images, it should be hiding on your desktop someplace. Here's my Unit 4 in-class images, and included in there is an icon-60 2x PNG file. If you don't have that, it's on OneDrive. If you don't have it, for right now, I would say just watch. And it just looks like a U4. That's just something I found for Unit 4, and I made it size the right way. And if we look at the details of this, if I remember right how to do it, get the info. Here's the info of it. It's 120 by 120. So I think what happens is this is the icon, but if you're using a non-Retina display, it actually shrinks it down to 60 by 60 for you, and it still should look pretty good because you're shrinking it. So it's 120 by 120 pixels. If you're good with drawing programs, you should be able to make your own, because other than its size, it's PNG, but it should have this name to make it flexible enough for Retina, normal, and then if you look at my notes, it says, oh, by the way, if you're doing iPad, now it needs to be a different size. And what you end up doing if you're going to publish this to a particularly a universal application, you end up creating all kinds of icon sizes. 60s, 152s, 1024s, 512s for this device and that thing, and you create all these different versions of your icon, and they can all be different. I wouldn't do that, but they can all be different.
Do they support icons like Windows does, where the icon has multiple different sizes? And
It gets done somehow, but it can't be in a PNG file. That's an ICO file that allows you to have multiple sizes in one file. No, I don't think so. I think you just have a bunch of these, and then when we look at this in just a second, you'll see there's many different places where you can designate, here's this icon, and here's this icon, and this icon, and this icon, and this icon. It's all kind of embedded in your project. All right, so there's my image. So now I'm going back to Xcode, and I'm going to go back to my image, and I'm going to add it. Same way we added our campus, you just simply drag it from the Finder into your supporting files folder. Copy it, so it leaves the original, and now I have that icon in here. And then next thing we need to do, I think that's right, gotta be careful. I'm having second thoughts. Resize it, note the rounding of the edges is done automatically, add it to the project. Click the project icon in the navigator, topmost, scroll down to the editing page. We put it in the wrong place. Leaving it there won't hurt anything, it'll take up a little bit of room, but that's it. According to this, we're supposed to go to the project navigator. Okay, let's see if I can find that, because the project navigator has kind of gone away. So is it you? Topmost folder, I think it told me, this one up here. There we go. Yep. That topmost folder in your navigation system. By the way, if you have errors, it'll switch to one of these. Just click back on the folder, it'll go back to folder layout. So now I'm here. And reading my own notes because I don't do this often enough. Scroll down in the editing pane and locate the app icons. Okay. App icons, there we go. and launch images. That launch image got created for us already. It says Unit 4. Remember when it launches, if there's a slight delay, that welcome screen was there. I don't think I need my code, so let's close the view controller. There we go. Then what? Then click the little arrow next to source app icon. Where you go? There it goes. Click the little arrow and choose images, probably. No? Oh, the arrow, that guy. Okay. Now we see the app icons and notice all the different sizes here. What the heck is iPhone Spotlight? That's an iTunes thing. And it wants little ones. Then there's iPhone Spotlights and settings icons. But here's my app icon. And this is new. That's what I get for opening it and not looking at it first. 3 times the resolution? Where'd that come from? I don't know. Notice there's no single anymore.
Is the new iPhone Plus, does it have more resolution? It's a bigger screen.
It's hard for me to imagine it has more resolution than a Retina display because that was already real life to me. But
I think they're colluding with the data providers to get people to upload bigger pictures so they can
who knows?
charge more for bandwidth.
Back to my, I think I can shrink this window because I don't need much space anymore.
Yeah.
And I can get rid of this guy, I think.
There's only one file.
Oh, that's where I started, okay. Okay, and let's resize this so I can do 2 things at once for a change. Okay. Alternative, click images, X assets in the navigator. Okay, so it'd probably take us to the same plate, and actually that's kind of where we are, isn't it? Yep. Drag it to the 2X, 60 point. So now I want to get to my Finder window again and drag it to that thing. So go here, go back to Finder, and I want to drag this to there. It lights up saying, I hear you. And there's my icon. A link to this image is stored in the plist info file, which is no longer directly editable. Wait a second. A link to the image? Because what happens if I delete it later? I don't think it's a link. Oh, this link is just saying if you need that image for something else, you can. So one more time, I'm going to run. Okay, when we run it, nothing's different here, but if I go to the home, Command-Shift-H, click on it, H, there's my icon, and you can define your own, and it squeezes them in there. You want a little border around there. I think that website will allow you to do some padding, to use the HTML terminology, but I don't care. I just want something that's different that I can recognize as mine and not have that generic one. It's kind of like leaving the project icon in Visual Studio alone and having this generic, gross-looking icon. Pick something that matches your project. Believe that's the end of my notes. So that's the end of Unit 4. I promised you lab all next week to work on your Unit 4 assignments and for me to work on your Unit 3 assignments. All right. So next week is lab. Have some fun with this. If you don't like my password one, and do one of your own, just look at the requirements. But or on the password one, have some fun with it. Experiment, try some things.
Do you have any, I don't know, not suggestions, but like what did people do last year if they did their own custom things? Or does it not bother so much?
I'd have to look see if I still have them. I don't remember a lot of them being unique in that one because it's new for you guys. It was even more new for them and me at the time, and so I dreamed up the password one, and they were more than happy to do that. It's relatively real world, right? Set some passwords.
How do we know that how do we make those passwords safe though?
How do you make them what?
Safe and encrypted though.
Saved. They won't be encrypted because they'll be saved in your program. How do you look inside your program? Well, you'd have to be infected with a virus for the virus to look inside your running program and see what's stored in the array. If you then want to store them to a database, hang in there. That's Unit 6. How do you encrypt them? That's a whole different question. That might be programming logic intermediate, and my new mantra will be save it for Sean. But all right, that's all for today. You can start work if you wish, or take the rest of the half hour off here.